and creates just support that goes both ways of LGBTQ plus dental professionals, and educate other dental professionals on LGBTQ plus issues. So we have a big mission, and so far so good. We've had a lot of great reception. Just like this webinar, there's a lot of attendees, and we hope to continue the momentum. I see Dr. Valenza's on here as well, and he's invited us to speak at the dental school, which we did last year, and it was a success. So we hope to continue to do that, and once again, just create more visibility and awareness for our community. But thank you all for being here. Thank you all for being here. I'm super excited. Yeah, thanks.
Alrighty, thank you, Cynthia. Okay, so today we have Dr. Lara Mach. She's a general dentist in Marion, Iowa, and she's a proud mother of a transgender son. So having been raised in a home where girls are mothers, they don't work, she has overcome traditional gender stereotypes for herself, and more recently has been a champion for the LGBTQ community. Dr. Mach is also a certified life coach through the Life Coach School, and she has a podcast called Feeling Good, a podcast for dentists, which discusses how to deal with the stresses of dentisting and dental practice ownership. Dr. Mach recently put out an e-course called Creating a Safe Space for Our Transgender Patients, which is available on Dental Toaster for a CE for any dental professional. And after we finish up here, we'll send that information out to the group. So without further ado, take it away.
Okay. Well, I just want to say, first of all, I'm so impressed with all of you guys coming together like this. I mean, I just think it's tremendous that everybody's here and supporting each other. And I feel like it's really tremendous that you found each other and you're there and you have a goal and you're working towards it. So I'm going to introduce myself a little bit, and then I've asked Alex to add my third child, who was born a girl, and last year, I will say his chosen pronoun, he texted me in the middle of the night and said, guess what, I'm transgender. And so it's been an exciting year for us to help him with his transition. And if I can find the share screen button, I will show you a picture of him. Oh, it's disabled. Daniela, can you enable me to share my screen?
Yeah, she should be working on it.
Okay, Danielle, if you just want to let me know when you get it, when you get that done, then I will show you a picture of.
Can you share it right now?
I can. Let me see. I can.
Perfect.
There he is. There's Max. This was almost a year ago, and he's just a delightful kid who is perfect just the way he is. And as his mom, it was important for me to be able to help other people see Max as perfect just the way he is. And what I found as becoming the mother of a transgender person is that there are challenges to being transgender, and one of them being a safety issue. You know, where am I respected? Where can I be trusted for people to use the correct name and pronoun, and to understand where I come from and just let me be myself. And I realized that that was a really common problem for transgender patients. So that's why I came up with a course on for any dental professional. And I actually talked to Max's endocrinologist about it. And she told me that nobody in dentistry does anything for transgender patients. So hopefully the course will take off. Probably all of you do not need the course. You know, you guys are the ones who already know. But if you have people who are reaching out and saying, hey, you know, what do I call this person, or how do I do this? You know, you can refer them to the course. So anyway, that's all I have prepared, but except for that, I'm going to ask Alex to ask me some questions so I can tell you my story in sort of an interview format.
Definitely. So we want to know about your kind of history with our community. Have you always been an ally to the LGBT community, or was it, you know, your son's transitioning that kind of started that interest, or you know, that new allyship that you've grown to have?
I wish that I could say that I've always been an ally, but I definitely cannot, because I was raised in a religion where being anything LGBTQ that wasn't, you know, hetero, cisgender, typical, was morally wrong. And not only that, but I was taught from the time that I was very young that my role as a woman was also circumscribed and very specific to what I was supposed to do, which was to make babies and then, you know, cook for the babies and cook and clean for my husband and raise them all to be good in the religion that we were raised in. So I even as a young adult, and even maybe a little bit in dental school, I was still like not really sure what I should be saying or believing, but I just remembered knowing, and I'm saying that in air quotes, you guys, okay, I'm knowing that it's wrong, you know, and that's where I came, that's what I was taught. That's where the culture came from. And, you know, you start out as a child and you get taught all this stuff, and as an adult, and you start to evaluate what you have been taught as a child, and some things that you keep and sometimes some things that you don't keep. And for me, leaving, so I was a Mormon, and leaving the Mormon church allowed me then to reevaluate a lot of things that I was taught, and that included what I believed about sexuality. So my transition to being an ally actually started well before my son came out to me, but it was probably, you know, around the time when I left the Mormon church. And that's also around the time when I realized that I, as a woman, could be anything that I decided I wanted to be. And when I first applied to dental school, I didn't really have the support of my family. My family said to me, hey, you know, if you go to dental school, then you won't be the leader of your family, or your husband won't be the leader of your family anymore. So actually, even as a young mom with 2 small children, when I got accepted into dental school, my grandma wrote me a letter that said I would be blessed to not go to dental school. Like, this is the culture that I grew up in. Like, you have a space that you're supposed to occupy, and you occupy that space because that's what God wants you to do. And so getting out of that, I was like, okay, well, maybe it's okay if 2 women love each other, or maybe it's okay if 2 men love each other. And then, you know, from there, it took a little bit of time with the rest of the identities. But yeah, no, I wasn't always an ally. Sorry.
If I can ask a question, how has your stance as an ally changed over the years?
That's a great question. So when I first decided that I supported gay and lesbian people, this was like, I don't know, 2007, 2008. And actually in Iowa was one of the first, that's where I'm from, Iowa was one of the first states to allow gay marriage. And I was like, yeah. But did you hear how I kind of whispered that? Because I didn't want to, like, I at the time I was nervous that I would alienate my patients. Oh my gosh, I support gay and lesbian people, but I don't want to make my patients mad if I say that out loud. Whereas now, I mean, we have a pride sticker on the door, and we were gonna be the people's the main what do you call it, sponsor for a pride festival for the town, but it got canceled because of COVID. But like, I was gonna get up there and I was gonna be a speech, you know, like, this is okay and we can all be ourselves. And so over the time, you know, when I was an early ally, I was like, yay, but now I'm like, woo. Everybody can be their own. And of course now I'm a mother of a transgender kid, so now I'm like, I mean, I got my course that I put on, and I'm just here to help support in any way that I can.
Definitely. Have you gotten backlash from patients? Not, you know, for once they learn about your trans son, or, you know, if they see the rainbow flag on the door or see you at a gay event, have you had any kind of that backlash or that negative feedback or that kind of just interrogation from any patients? And if so, how have you handled that?
So I would say the vast majority of people have been super supportive. Sometimes maybe a little bit confused. They've been older patients, so what, you know, but I did have, every once in a while you run into someone that you can just tell is not with you on it. And I had a patient before the pandemic. Oh, well, we were talking about my kids and she said, how are your girls? And I said, well, one is transgender now and he prefers the male pronoun. So we refer to me as Max now. And she said, oh, you know, and she started being like, are you worried about him? No, she didn't. She actually misgendered him. So she said, are you worried about her? And what are you going to do? And blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, actually, we're fine with it. And he's good with it. So everything's good, you know, but thanks for asking and caring. And then I kind of, you know, put my dentist authority hat on and exited the conversation. And she actually found me on social media and tagged me in an anti-trans video. And when it first happened, I was really upset because I was like, how dare she tell me how to raise my kid, you know? And I mean, the video was about, it was a man who was biologically male, and then he was transgender, and so he went by female, and then he went back to man, and he was saying that we shouldn't allow our children to choose their gender, basically, and I say that in air quotes again too. And when it first happened, when she tagged me in the video, and I'm like, oh my gosh, the audacity of this woman trying to tell me how to raise Max and tell me what's right, you know, and I was really mad. So what I did was, first I just took a deep breath and tried to think about what I wanted the outcome of this conversation to be. Because when I was not an ally, when I still believed what I had been taught from my church, there were moments when I could see clearly, just moments at first, but when I could see clearly that I wasn't necessarily correct. And those moments were times when I had encounters with people in the LGBTQ community who showed me love and respect, even though I was wrong. Like, for example, I had this neighbor, and I wish I could remember her last name because I really want to tell her everything that's happened since she was my neighbor, but it was like, I don't know, 15, 16, 17 years ago. And she was a lesbian, and we sat on the porch one day, and I was like, you know, I really like you, but this is morally wrong. You know, this is what I said. I'm like embarrassed to tell you guys I did this, but this is part of the story, right? So her name's Jean, and she said, you know what, Laura, I hope someday you can really understand this better. And that's all she really said. Like, she didn't try to criticize me, and she showed me love. And when my patient put that on Facebook, that is what I remembered, was how this person had gone above or beyond the anger and showed me love. Like, how can you argue with love? You just can't, right? And so when the patient put that on there, this is what I remembered was the love that I was shown. And so what I did, instead of lashing out at her, was I used my life coaching skills, and I decided that I wanted my outcome for her to be that I have shown her love, and hopefully that someday she'll be able to understand better like somebody showed me. And I made a podcast about it, on my podcast, about how I handled it. And this is how I ended up doing the course and everything, because people were so responsive when I was able to share what happened.
And I think it's really, it's special that you're putting out this course, and I've listened to a few of your podcasts, because I think it's different when it comes from someone that's an ally. You know, with any minority group or with any group that is kind of struggling for justice, we can never really get to where we want to be without our allies.
Mm-hmm.
So we're definitely very thankful for you for that.
Thank you.
And there's a question in the chat box from Dr. Rodriguez. So he's asking, what is something you would want dentists to know or to do better in their practice when treating transgender patients?
Well, that's a great question. You know, it's actually really, really simple. For transgender patients, first of all, we want them to know that they're in a space where they're respected, that their gender is something that we recognize, and we allow them to be who they are. So we're not saying, are you sure? Or should I call you Mrs. or Mr.? We say, what is your preferred or correct name? What is your correct pronoun? And then we just use it. And so what we do is, in our practice, we just have a very simple policy that once somebody tells us, I'm a he, him, or I'm she, her, or whatever, the policy is that for all the staff, that's what they're supposed to say. And that's it. And the other thing is that we used to have, in our health history, we had gender, male or female, and we just changed it to a blank space. And that way people can put down whatever they need to.
And it's really as simple as that, because that's a question that we get a lot. You know, what about our health history forms? What do we do? It's as simple as putting a blank space.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Or just having an option as a blank space for someone to fill out their preferred gender, if any. So yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So I think Aaron had a question. Yeah, you might have to unmute yourself, Aaron.
Hi, I'm Aaron. Sorry I got here late. But I'm a pediatric dentist. I work in Sugar Land. But have you found it difficult to train your staff as far as in your private office? Or has all the staff members been very accepting?
Have you had trouble training your staff? I haven't. It's just kind of like, hey, this is what we do. This is how we're doing it. And all of my team has been very accepting of that. Have you guys had problems with that in some of your offices?
I feel some of the older staff members that have been there longer, obviously there's some, I don't want to say backlash, but just difference of opinions.
Yeah.
The younger ones, you know, obviously more open-minded, easier to deal with.
Yeah. So I don't have any team members, but I can tell you that, like, when I encounter older people who are like, oh, usually what I do is I just go, well, this is the way it is. And I don't really leave any space for them to really argue back. I say it pleasantly, you know, but I don't know if you have someone who's having trouble using correct pronouns, that I might pull them into the room and into a private room and say, what's going on, and let them express their concern. I don't know.
Yeah, and if anything, with with my staff, there were a couple of occasions in the past where I've kind of noticed really just the lack of understanding. It wasn't because they were anti-trans or anti-gay. They just didn't really know how to communicate or address someone. I work at a federally qualified health center in Houston, and so we're a big safety net for the Houston area. And so we're in the gay neighborhood in Houston. So we see a lot of the queer population. And we have, many trans patients, and some of them who are not able to, or maybe just not wanting to, fully transition physically, or in the lenses of other people to what they expect a trans person to look like. And so, sometimes patients, we may not know. We may not know what their gender expression is, what their identity is, and how they want to be addressed. And, I have patients that sometimes they come in traditionally female presenting clothing, and a couple of days later, I'll see them again, they'll look completely different. They'll have different hair, a couple of weeks later, different hair color. Sometimes, like I said, they'll wear traditionally female clothes. Another time they'll wear jeans and a t-shirt. And so that just kind of goes to show you how much of a spectrum gender and sexuality are. But yeah, going back to that, I never really had any instances with staff where it was something as anti-gay or anti-trans, but just more of a lack of understanding, really. And of course, that becomes a learning experience to anyone in your staff.
Yeah, that might be a helpful time to show your staff my course. I mean, it's specifically for transgender, not more in general LGBTQ, but it goes through the history and the understanding of where did transgender people even come from, like why didn't we even understand this when we were growing up, and how do we talk to them? And so it goes through understanding, and then also proper protocols. So that's something that you could use as a resource. I mean, the course is only $30, and it's for anyone who works in dentistry. You don't have to be a dentist to take the course.
Yeah. Great. So do you want to describe a little bit about, I know you spoke a little bit about about the patient that was criticizing your transgender son, and you mentioned it in a podcast. I did listen to that podcast episode. What else do you kind of discuss in your podcast, and what other kind of topics do you cover?
So that gets into life coaching, which is basically my way of explaining how I'm a life coach is basically that I help people understand that they are not the same as their thoughts. Their thoughts come from their brain, and our brains are neurological organs that are set up by evolution for certain goals, like stay alive, make a baby, eat some food, if that makes sense. So our brain is tending towards negativity. And when we understand that our brains aren't exactly us, and we can really look at our thoughts, and it's stressful to be a dentist, right? Like someone's complaining about their insurance, or their crown hurts after you put it on, or whatever. And if you're living in this life and you're not understanding how your brain works, then you can really quickly get into some unhappy habits. So my podcast is for any dentist who's just trying to be happier. And that's why it's called Feeling Good, because it's trying to retrain your brain to have better, more intentional thoughts.
Can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
So as as I mentioned earlier with the Houston Equality Dental Network, as an ally, what's something that you would want to see in your local LGBTQ dental organization, or what's something that you would appreciate to help you either become an ally or continue as an ally?
Can you restate it?
The question is there anything that an LGBTQ dental organization could do to help you become an ally dentist, going back to when you weren't one? That's one part. Second part is now
we have Pride Month, which is, hey, look, there are people you love, people you respect, who are LGBTQ plus, and it's okay. So a lot of it is awareness. We're out here, we're contributing, and we're okay weren't an ally, what would be the most helpful is to just see people who are in the community and good and contributing, and just go, oh gosh, I guess this, just like my neighbor showed me love. She showed me that she was fine just the way she was. She didn't have to change for me. And I just think awareness and visibility is the most helpful thing.
Yeah, and I think, when it comes to that, that visibility, we've mentioned amongst ourselves about, during Pride Month, making a post on Facebook, wearing a rainbow pin, having a rainbow flag. But going back to, having allies, I read something recently. I don't really remember exactly what it was about, but it was something along the lines of, the changes made when allies are alone, and allies themselves all it takes is one person to kind of say, well, let's not really joke about that, or let's call him as his preferred pronouns.
Mm-hmm.
And so going back, that's why we're thankful for someone like you that has worked with only straight people and kind of still fights the fight for us. So that's pretty great.
Well,
Any questions from any? Oh, there's a question in the chat.
I see there's one. Yeah, there's one in the chat, and I was something similar. There's a chat question that's asking, have you ever had to navigate situations where the patient's legal name under the dental insurance company policy does not match the patient's preferred name? And what are any tips for navigating this? And I was going to ask this as well. We currently have a new patient that's wanting to come to us that's in the middle of going through the legal transition that needs to happen, and if there's any advice or tips for navigating this potential insurance issue.
Yeah, so basically this is a problem because of insurance, right? Because if it weren't for dental insurance, we would put the preferred name in and it would be fine, right? But because insurance, you got to have that birth date right, and you got to have the gender right, and you got to all those things has to match up in order to get that third party payment, which means that you almost need 2 records, but that wouldn't make any sense because that would be confusing, right? So what we do is, if we have a patient whose gender, like preferred gender or correct gender, does not match their biological gender or their legal gender, then we make sure that that person's first name is in all capital letters, because insurance will take that either way, whether they don't really care about capitals. And this is like a physical sign to us that we need to look into this a little bit more before we say the name, before we accidentally misgender somebody, and make sure that the insurance gets sent correctly, but that we also communicate with that patient correctly.
There's another question in the chat from Tracy Tran. Her and Vanessa are dental students in New York, outside of New York, I believe. And so their question was, they're wondering how you would address the situation when working with a minor who wants to be addressed in a different pronoun than what their parents want.
Mm-hmm. This is a hard one. And I will tell you that Max's endocrinologist and I are a little bit different on this. So Max's endocrinologist, she says you should always just use the correct one that the kid wants. And I can see points for that. I absolutely can. In private practice, this is how I do it. And you guys can let me know if you have any suggestions for a better way to do it. Typically, our parents of patients sit in the waiting room. And so when we have the patient back with us in the privacy, then we'll say, hey, I see that your preferred name is such and such, and your preferred gender is such and such. And when we're back here, that's what I'm going to talk to you as, okay? Your parents don't want me to talk to you that way, and I have to respect what they're doing too. So when I'm in the waiting room, I'm going to refer to you with your legal name. And the reason that I do that is because I'm in private practice, which means that that parent could take that child somewhere else if they want to. But I want to know that they're here with me, where I know that I can give that child the respect that they deserve. And it's not, I don't think there's one perfect way to answer. That's a really, really good question. Does anybody else have a way that they handle that they think works pretty well?
Aaron?
So I kind of have that similar situation. We had a parent recently, or a patient recently transition female to male. Mom totally on board with it, prefers the male gender pronouns. The staff get annoyed, and I kind of get annoyed too when dad comes in, because dad is not on board with it. So I just do the same thing. I ask dad, they're older, they can come to the back, we're going to do a cleaning, I'll let you know the findings at the end. And I handle it the same way. I respect, our patient, male pronouns, and then I just go and tell dad, okay, we did not find anything, no cavities, see you back in 6 months.
So now,
just because I know the patient wants to be referred to as male gender pronouns.
And you bring up something that's really smart, which is you can also just avoid using any pronouns if you want to, and that works pretty nicely. That's a good idea. You can always use they too. Like people say, oh no, you can only use it if it's plural. No, everybody uses they when they're referring to a singular person anyway, so you can use they.
Definitely. Thank you. There's a couple more questions in the chat room right now. So Dr. Rodriguez was asking regarding registration forms. Besides Dentrix or other software programs, have you seen any registration forms out there that include other besides male and female, or that are left blank?
No, but I know that you can, like with Yappy, you can, and probably a lot of other forms, you can individualize it so it can be the way you want it to be. And everybody's software is different. So my advice to you is just to go look at the constraints of your software and figure something out.
Yeah, and that's also a great opportunity. We all use different dental software systems, so that's a really good opportunity to maybe reach out to that company and say, like, hi, what's going on? What can we do to change to add just a blank space under the gender category? So that would be a really great opportunity to everyone else as allies and some to help us. So let's see, there's a couple other questions here. Susan's asking, how do we open the conversation, or should we, versus letting our patients open that door when it comes to a patient who is changing their gender identity?
Mm-hmm. So basically it's like, hey, I'm sensing maybe something's different here, right? How do I ask you that? You can just say, hey, what's your pronoun? Because I'll tell you, every young person thinks that that's a normal question. Like, I'm 45, nobody has ever asked me what my pronoun is. But when you're 15 or 20, 22, 23, everyone's been asked what their pronoun is, and it's totally okay to ask that.
And something that we can also do, whether we're in the community or an ally, is add our pronouns to our email signature or to our ID badge. Very, very simple thing, easy to do. It's quiet, it's silent, but it's a way just to get other people to see that. It's a huge confidence builder if someone who is in the community sees your pronouns on your website, on your advertising. That's a way to gain patients in the community as well, but it's also a way to kind of show other people that, oh, this is actually an option, or this is actually something to consider, this pronoun. So
well, that's a really good point. Like, if you're putting your pronoun in your email signature, then everybody who sees that, who's in the LGBTQ community, is like, oh, it's almost like putting a pride flag on your email signature.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah,
here it is, you're safe here.
definitely. So Dr. Kimberly Rona is saying that Axiom has finally expanded their gender options. So that's great. That's what they use at the dental school. That's fantastic. And Dr. Valenza, so Dr. Valenza is the Dean of the University of Texas School of Dentistry here in Houston. So he said he's really enjoying the discussion this evening, and he's asking, what can I as a dean and we as a dental school do better to improve and ensure a positive environment for the LGBTQ students?
That's a really good question. I really feel like the Houston Dental Equality group should be answering that question, not me. I mean, what do you guys answer that question?
So, throughout dental school, I never had any major events where I felt excluded or situations where I didn't feel comfortable or wasn't felt accepted at all from my colleagues. But, there were often times, and we've kind of talked about it as a group, where I think I still was in a shell, even though I was out and I, talked to my classmates and friends pretty openly. I was still in a shell those 4 years. And that really prevented me from, now looking back, that really prevented me from leadership opportunities. That prevented me from going to speak to my professors when I needed help. That prevented me from being fully myself. And overall, I think that affected the education I got. And that affected a lot of, opportunities early on in my career. So as far as becoming a better environment, we want to put LGBTQ information and awareness in the curriculum. That's, that's, if it's in the curriculum and it's something that is presented on, something that is mentioned on, not only in, one class or one presentation, but throughout the 4 years of dental school. I know at the dental school, we did a lot of virtual patient scenarios. So why don't we make someone that's trans or someone that's gay, a pediatric patient that's transitioning, kind of, just to get the awareness up a little bit more throughout the dental school. Having a much more diverse dental staff and administration and faculty and staff, I think, is a big deal. Because when I was in dental school, they might have been one or two people that, I knew were LGBT, but it was nothing ever really spoken about. It was nothing where I went, I felt that I had a gay mentor in dental school that I can go to and ask more personal questions or kind of just be myself around. So I think as we continue to, diversify our professors and faculty members, looking into, adding more LGBTQ faculty members and professors and staff into the school is fantastic, and that's a step forward for sure.
I have something to add too about that. I think this was done in my undergrad, and I think it's something that could easily be done at dental schools too. Similar to how you have a pride flag in your office, there we have that in our office too. Right when they walk in, it's like the first thing you see. And so I think if any staff or faculty at the dental school want to have like at their office or something like either an ally sticker or like a pride flag or something, that would make students at the school who don't feel comfortable maybe going up to, maybe they don't realize that there's someone that they can speak to and just be more open with, that would kind of broadcast that. So that could be an option as well.
Yeah, and that's also something to consider when we, when we're looking at our admissions committee or people looking into applications of those interested in applying to dental school or coming to dental school. I think as the years continue, we're going to see a lot more dental school applicants that are queer, that are trans, that are maybe non-binary, and able to host it, have them interview our school and to feel comfortable. So when we think about the admissions committee, overall is any other questions from anyone else? Okay. You're welcome, Dr. Lorenzo. Thank you for the question. Okay. Oh, look, there's another question. So a lot of my classmates resist learning about treating diverse populations like the LGBTQ, disabled, limited English proficiency, etc., as they believe they won't be treating them in private practice. I love the idea of simulated series that help us practice. So yeah, that's true. I do remember one specific instance in dental school. So a classmate and I were doing a year-long project at a HIV clinic. And we tried to present to our class one day. We got, a lot of eye rolls, a lot of people not really paying attention, a lot of laughs. And something that we kind of overheard through other people was, well, I would refuse to treat someone with HIV, or I would refuse to treat someone trans. And I think that just kind of comes back to, you know, maybe the more conservative history of dentistry as a profession. And so I think kind of really putting, you know, LGBTQ related topics into the curriculum, HIV and AIDS, which is still a really big, really stigmatized in the community. Having those kinds of things and kind of normalizing them as a simulated patients or a series is definitely a step forward in dental education as well.
I have something to add to that too, as someone who's in private practice, just from a money perspective only, just as a business owner, being an ally is good for business because you have people coming to you and it's a tight-knit community and people are like, yeah, I come here because I know it's safe, or my aunt told me, or my friend told me, or whatever. Like if you're thinking, oh, well, I'm not going to run into these people out in private practice, that's ignorant and dumb. So even if you're just talking about the money, not that you're going to tell your friend that they're dumb, but you know, you can say, hey, you know, actually I know people who say this is good for business.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's one of those like lessons that maybe students may not really understand until they're actually out there in practice.
Right.
But yeah, it's great. Yeah. Okay, so any other questions from anyone else? Feel free to ask or, oh, one more. Okay, so, oh, okay. So it looks like we're getting close to the end for today. If there are any other questions at all, I will, if it's okay, Laura, I can send your contact information to the group. We can have information with your course, information about your podcast. Before we close up, just wanted to thank everyone for joining us today. We're hoping to have more courses like this in the future. It looks like the world is going to be virtual from now on for at least you know, the rest of the year. So please kind of just stay tuned with your emails and with our website. We have a few courses coming up that are planned. Again, we are, as an organization, are offering free dental consultations to the queer community here in Houston. So if you're in Houston and you want to get involved, let us know. I know we have people from all over the country joining us today. So if you have any suggestions, any questions, any ways that you want to kind of collaborate, please let us know. If you're interested in mentoring a dental student, also let us know. Dr. Mack, do you have any last statements or anything? No? Okay, well, Dr. Mack, thank you so much for your time. We really, really appreciated this conversation. I'll share your contact information with everyone. Yeah, we're very, very thankful for everything that you're doing. Oh,
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. It was an honor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you. And if you can provide the link to the podcast or, you know, any information, that'd be great as well.
Yeah, I'll send that out to everyone.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Sue, for being a great ally. All right, everyone. We'll have a great evening. And we will send a follow-up email soon. So thank you all so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you again, Laura.